Welcome to Navigating Leadership Realities. I'm Jamie Davidoff of Spark Success, and I'm here with my co-host Colleen Lewis of Maverick Trailblazing.
Hi, everyone.
Thanks, Colleen. Today's topic is pivoting as a strategic choice, how to move through uncertainty. So we're going to explore what we mean by pivoting, how it's important, and how to actually implement it. So Colleen, when you think about pivoting as a strategic choice, what comes to mind for you?
It's about changing or realigning your strategic orientation or direction with respect to, developing your business. Maybe it's something to do with your career path, but instead of looking at that direction, you have that great little arrow there, you create other directions and you look at shifting. It doesn't have to be a monumental shift. It can be a small shift. And so it's that course correction that we talk about in the other videos. How about for you?
Yeah, as you said that, it reminded me of a satellite dish, It just only takes a tiny shift to change the trajectory of where the satellite dish connects with the satellite, right? You don't need to make a huge shift to make a big change.
That's right.
Yeah. So, and I just think about, like if we were standing on one foot and just shifted, to me, that's like a pivot. It changes where our eyes are focused. Puts us potentially in a new direction or at a choice point to try a new or different direction. And like we say here on this slide, when organizations feel stuck in uncertainty, which can certainly happen, pivoting provides these new perspectives to give us new choice, new things to try. Anything to add to that, Colleen?
Well, we're certainly dealing with a lot of uncertainty, but even though it's happening right now, I believe going forward into the future, that we're going to be dealing with a lot of uncertainty as we move forward as future. We've had so much, I don't necessarily want to call it disruption, but a lot of change is taking place, and there's so many new opportunities on the horizon. So there's so many opportunities for pivoting.
Absolutely. So we have a number of examples here. I'll share the Shopify one first. So Shopify didn't actually start out as an e-commerce product. It started out as a snowboarding equipment store called Snow Devil. And as the founders, as it came up, the founders realized that they had a selling idea. And it was the selling idea that actually became what put Shopify on the map. Right? And so all this to say that what they started with was not what they ended up doing, and they were able to shift and remain successful by realizing, wow, like we've actually got something else that's in the background that actually could be the basis for our business, which of course it did. Was there another example you'd like to share, Colleen?
Yeah, so in the article that was on the previous slide, Google was bought up. So we all know Google. Google's a search engine company. It's where you go to look things up when you want to find some answers or information, and so they're a data company as well. One thing they did was they launched in 2000 AdWords, and they became a marketing company. So they've never quit doing the core, but they saw that there was this opportunity with this huge audience they had gained, and they were able to pivot and take advantage of what they already had.
That's amazing. And now they have all sorts of other products as well that connect us and make online work together very efficient. Great. That's a great example of a pivot. So let's look at why it's important to pivot, and particularly in uncertain times. Pivoting can help us stay relevant, viable, For instance, let's just take a general example right now. When we were told that we needed to physically distance ourselves, we had to find new ways of working. And I'm saying we collectively. And one of those ways is to move work online, right? If we were to say, oh, I'm going to wait till things reopen again, things might not reopen in exactly the same way, right? We don't know. There's a lot of uncertainty. But what we do know is if we can kind of shift or pivot and go, what could I do right now and how could I do it? Oh, there's lots of tools online. And so I don't know about you, Colleen, but I had moved some of my programs online that I used to do in person. And I mean, fortunately, we're in an industry where we can do that. We recognize that not everybody can do that, but everybody in their own way is needing to find their pivot. When a company pivots, it really helps increase clarity for the direction of the organization, but in a shorter term time frame than what we've become accustomed to. It more importantly gives people within that organization a sense of where we're going. Although we don't know exactly where we're going to be going, we have a sense of what direction we can go in together. And instead of feeling stuck.
The word adaptation came to mind when you were saying that. And it made me think about how we adapt. When we're talking about a pivot, though, it's that shift that actually takes place.
Say more about that, Colleen.
So we're in, businesses, people, we come across new information constantly. And we, if we can consider ways that we can adapt to this new information that's coming in. And if we're headed in a direction, to be able to shift using that new found information and to move forward. And when it gets more new information, you might be shifting in another direction. So it's a cumulative thing that's happening as new information, new ideas are generated.
Yeah, so what I hear you saying is, there's a pivot and then we adapt. So the organization might decide on a pivot based on all the information they have. And then that allows their people to then know what to adapt to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good point. Anything else before we move into the how to pivot?
We've got a lot of how to cover, so let's roll.
Let's do it. Okay, so firstly, there's the foundations of a pivot. Would you like to share those, Colleen?
Love to. So when we talk about it not happening overnight, typically what we're looking at is 1-2 years out, because you're doing these incremental shifts along the way and doing the course correction or the new direction that you're looking at. So it's going to take some patience and trust and some being confident with taking some risk taking. And it's not, again, we're not talking monumental shifts. We're talking about those slow, incremental, step-by-step corrections or course directions that we're making. And so, as I said, it's going to take some open-mindedness, right? Having that willingness to have comfort with risk and making those risk-making decisions or risk-taking decisions. So having that open-mindedness, the willingness to do that. So when you're looking at what's going around you, it's important to not jump into any quick decisions. So being positive, taking a pause, looking at, okay, well, what kind of data, what kind of information do I have here? What am I noticing about this information? Watching it, reading it, feeling it, getting other viewpoints. Ask yourself, what can we do collectively that we can't do alone, right? And then taking in something and trying something different. A great colleague and friend of mine said, when we experience a situation and we didn't like the outcome or it wasn't what we expected, do something, different. instead of trying to do the same things over and over again. So again, observing what the impact of those changes have been, and then what you've learned, applying to that next pivot that you're going to take. What do you have to add to that, Jamie?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the iterative learning cycle, really. It's about, well, like, it's a step outside the comfort zone for a lot of us, right?
Mhm.
And it's a skill to be developed. And like you said, it involves some risk, right? Because we're not sure what the outcome's going to be. And so, you know, that's a pivot in itself, is to take a little more risk than what we might be used to as well. So how we do it. So first, in that cycle that you just described, Colleen, in the prior slide, we need to increase our awareness. That's really the starting point. How might we increase our awareness or understand to be aware? Often it will start out with, you know, feeling stuck, right? Or just even feeling like, I don't know where to go next. As they say, what is it called? Invention is the mother of necessity, is the mother of invention, right? So we need to create some sort of environment for our people as well to be aware and also come up with new ways of working, thinking, collaborating together. And you had this idea of using design thinking as a framework. Could you share a little bit more about that, Colleen?
Oh, sure. So I remember what year it was, but Stanford University initiated a design thinking process, and it's available now in D School, by the way. And it's a simple 5-step process, and you start with empathize. So that's where you're gathering information, you're interviewing, you're seeking to understand information, being non-judgmental about it, and then you move into the define process. And this is where you look at, you know, what is it that we, you know, what's the issue or the pain point or the challenge that needs to be defined here? And then you start to ideate. So you're sharing those ideas, figuring out which ones are worth it, which ones aren't, what needs to be prioritized, where do you need to diverge and where do you need to converge, and then you move into the prototype situation. And, you know, it's looking at storyboards, running prototypes, fail fast forward, being able to look at what's working well with this prototype, what isn't working well with it, and then it's testing it, right? Looking at, okay, so what are the impediments, you know, what is it that is working well, what isn't working well? And this, if you look at it kind of in a cycle, you might need to go from empathize to find, ideate, and then go back to empathize again, because you're constantly getting feedback and new information. So it's, to me, a great process that marries in so well with creating those pivots and systems thinking that it's worth a look if somebody wants to start creating those idea labs and having a framework to follow.
Where did you say that people could find that, Colleen?
It was developed by Stanford University.
Mm-hmm.
So they have what they call D School.
Okay, D School, as in D as in design.
School, yeah, exactly.
All right. That's great. And I mean, it really shows that this isn't just a matter of, you know, looking around and getting new perspectives and just making a pivot, right? I mean, it's very well thought through shift based on the information we do have versus waiting for all the information, because that's not possible right now. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. So, I mean, point 3 is part of that. It's asking team members for ideas, thoughts, and opinions, also other stakeholders in the organization, external stakeholders potentially as well. You know, the more heads we can get together, the more ideas that we have to choose from and take through that framework. Now, there's some other ways of looking at it under point 4 here, which is to build on what you have that's working well. We don't want to throw everything out here. We want to really build on what's working well. Be aware of, like, do some analysis and see where you're having losses that no longer fit. With our changing times, that can happen more rapidly than usual, or than usual. Look, I have to catch myself. So it's not, you know, we don't have that usual we go back to anymore. Or refine something that we're already doing, but we might fine tune it a little bit, and it makes it a new innovation for our organization. And of course, with any of these, identify what areas are profitable. I mean, you know, we're in business for a reason. We all do need to make a profit and make a living as well. So it makes sense to really focus in on what's profitable and leverage that. Taking into consideration not just the financial side, but also the values, and how these ideas fit in with the values and culture of the organization. And then focus on those that bring benefit for everybody involved. Anything to add there, Colleen?
I just wanted to add that on point 4 there, even if an idea is not working and you're looking at cutting your losses, bear in mind that sometimes there are ideas that you have that it just isn't the right time for them. So you just park them, come back and revisit them later.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So we had a second how there. I guess sorry. Okay. So there's a lot of ways of looking at pivots, and we've gone through a lot of information and it seemed overwhelming, right? But it's like a one step at a time approach. It starts with awareness, bringing in then new ideas by being curious and asking for other people's perspectives, and looking at how those fit with your organization, and selecting something that's going to really work for, you know, it's not going to be perfect for everybody, but it's going to work for all involved. As Colleen shared earlier, a pivot really is a strategic reorientation. So it's a looking at business in a different way, and bringing in new ideas and using a shorter timeline than what we're used to. Could you share a little bit about point 2 here, Colleen, about future fit?
Absolutely. So when you think about an organization that's future fit, you know, you hear a lot about leadership qualities or organizational qualities, right? So when you think of that learning type of an organization where we're looking to examine what's been working well, what's worked in the past, but what do we need going forward is asking those questions constantly and looking at what do we need to do now to be viable in the future? What do we need to be fit for the future? So, I mean, that's looking at the whole aspect of the organization. So everything from what's our strategic direction that we're moving towards? How viable is that going to be in the future? And what do we need to do to be able to maintain the present fitness that we have and the fit that we have going into the future? Because we know everything changes all the time. And how readily and easily can we shift and pivot to ensure that that viability is there?
Yeah, that brings to mind having a flexible strategic plan. So our question to you is, in the next 30 days, what do you see as a possible pivot for you and your organization? Just a thought. And we want to invite you to join us for our complimentary live leadership group conversations forums. We hold them every Wednesday at noon Mountain Daylight Time for half an hour. If you're interested in that, you can come on a drop-in basis and just email us and we'll provide you with the webinar details. We don't record the forums. That really fosters some rich discussion. And then recordings like this, you'll find others on our YouTube channel along with this one. And our YouTube channel is Navigating Leadership Realities. Our email's navleadershiprealities@gmail.com. Any final words, Colleen?
I want to thank everyone for listening in and joining this segment with us today. And by all means, if you know of anyone else that you think might be interested in what we have to say here, Or if you have any questions, Jamie and I are more than happy to connect with you at the email address, navleadershiprealities.com, and let's have a conversation.
Yes. Thanks, Colleen. Thanks, everybody.